Hey guys! That took me a second. Um, Welcome back. We are going to be going on to reading Lied to Your Faces. I was cruel and unfair. I tried to set up the stream last time to where I wrote a description that included links to the previous videos. Unfortunately, I don't know how to YouTube, so the actual links weren't in there. So if you happened to be watching the last video, not that anybody did, but if you had, then you would see that no, you're not allowed to see chapter 1 and 2. But I fixed it. It's not in the descriptions. I still don't know how to do that. But I have a playlist on my channel that will contain all of the videos, hopefully in order, because the titles are not in order, because I just tell them reading fanfiction at night because I live stream them. Anyway, for whoever missed last time and doesn't feel like watching a 52-minute video of me reading and my voice getting steadily worse throughout it, in a nutshell, the last chapter was Shinzo got thrown into E-class for being a hero. The five virtuosos are creeps. Shinzo knows Midoriya is quirkless. People start using their quirks to kill Koro-sensei. They bomb their midterms and go to Musutafu, where they meet Bakugo and wreak havoc. Oh, and Midoriya and Shinzo make a deal to start training together, and Koro-sensei's fancy shampoo made Karma's hair red and white. Strange, huh? And that's at the end of the author's note. So I'm just gonna actually read that every single time that there's an author's note at the end that gives a whole summary of the last chapter. So I'm just gonna start reading that whenever I'm at the beginning of a new video. Anyways, welcome to chapter 3. To become stronger. The days following the trip, he and Shinzo met up early before school, like usual, to talk and exchange coffee and sweets. Unlike usual, however, after Shinzo downed his espresso way too fast to be healthy, and Izuku had finished his red bean bun, the purple haired boy put down the cup and sent a wide kick at his friend's face. Izuku, not expecting the sudden attack, could only stumble backwards to dodge. He barely had time to regain his footing before Shinzo came at him again, this time with his anti-sensei knife drawn and poised to attack. The green-haired boy was a bit more prepared this time and blocked the attack, knocking the arm away and ducking under as he tried to swipe Shinso's legs out from under him. The purple-haired boy jumped back for a second, and neither of them moved, struggling to catch their breath. Shinso, Izuku said after his heart rate began to slow down again. Is there a reason you're trying to kill me over coffee? The brainwasher smirked, putting his knife away. We made a bet, remember? Whoever's the better assassin at the end of the year, assuming the world doesn't end, of course, gets to design the other's hero costume. And there's no way I'm giving this opportunity up. Now, how do you feel about hot pink? Zuku giggled and gave his friend a playful push. Please, you might as well give up now because you know I'm going to win. Karasuma says I have the most potential in hand to hand. Maybe out of the girls, Shinso teased as they began to walk inside the building. Besides, even if you are better at fighting, I'll win out of sheer willpower. There's no way I'm letting you touch my costume. Hey, I would be a great costume designer. Keep telling yourself that, Jolly Green. I've seen your bunny costume sketches. I'll be doing you a favor. They got a new transfer student. She was a giant box robot. Apparently, the world governments were more desperate than they originally imagined. They hired an outside company from Norway to create an assassination robot, formerly called Autonomously Thinking Fixed Artillery, that supposedly had the ability to calculate data from previous attempts to evolve attacks at rapid speeds to make them more accurate at each attempt. Izuku was just glad he gave her a human face on a screen and a voice, even if it was emotionless and robotic and done only for the purpose of passing her off as a student. And like all other students, she was tasked with killing Koro-sensei before graduation. And boy, did she try. There wasn't a peaceful moment left in Class 3E that day. Even during instruction, there was a constant gunfire as the robot recalculated and polished her attacks with seemingly endless artillery. Despite how annoying it was, there was evidence it was working at least. By the robot's second attack, she had actually succeeded in blowing off one of Koro-sensei's fingers. That didn't make it any less aggravating, however. By lunch, Shinsu looked ready to smash the bot into a million pieces. He wasn't alone in that option. This is just bullshit. I can't believe we have to deal with her shooting up the classroom all day, and then we have to clean up her mess, Terasaka mumbled, and for once, Suzuku found himself agreeing with the boy. Shinzo leaned against his broom and sighed. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to put up with this for another day. I come to school to learn, not play duck and cover in a war zone. I like how you think, turnip head, the lion boy commented. Shinso rolled his eyes and got back to sweeping. Izuku hesitantly eyed the black machine, which had since gone silent now that their target was no longer in the room. They were right. They couldn't spend the rest of the school days avoiding bullet showers, even if her statistics were right, and there was a likelihood she could kill Core Sensei by graduation. There wouldn't be much benefit for the rest of B class, and there would be no way they could pass entrance exams, and they wouldn't even get a share of the money if she assassinated their teacher. There might be a 90% chance of her success if she kept this up, but at the same time, that meant a 100% chance of utter failure for everyone else. The next morning, after his and Shinso's quick duel, which he totally won no matter what the other said, Izuku walked up to find the assassination machine wrapped up in tape. He stared at his best friend out of the corner of his eye. Shinso, did you do this? Shinso didn't even bother feigning ignorance. No, Terasaka did. No, Terasaka did. I just came up with the idea. Normally, Izuku would lecture him on the negatives of feeding into his evil mastermind tendencies and how he was starting to act like karma, but this time he couldn't bring himself to care. And as he thought about the quiet time he could have in class now, he couldn't help but be a little grateful. In the end, Core Sensei saved the day, spending all of his money to give the robot upgrades so that she had a broader range of expression and a more approachable appearance, replacing her tiny screen for a full body screen. The robot was strangely poetic and very cutesy, which was just all sorts of weird, but a welcome change. She no longer was trying to shoot Core Sensei 24/7 and had a newfound respect for her classmates' learning environment. As the day went on, she actually turned out to be pretty fun. She was great at gathering and analyzing data, and they had pretty awesome conversation about heroes and quirks during lunch. Even Shinzo, despite his previous basis against her, was growing fond of the robot after he learned one of her features was allowed her to brew coffee. The brainwasher was still frustrated at the fact that she had completely destroyed him in a game of chess beforehand. The only person who could come close to beating Shinzo was Karma. Hey, Hey, don't you think it's time to get a new name? You got a new name? Izuku asked, glancing at the robot as he consoled his best friend after his defeat. The lilac haired girl looked confused at the proposition. I agree. Autonomously thinking fixed artillery is a bit of a mouthful, Kataoka added. Fuwa suddenly perked up. Oh, I got it! Since Jitsu means autonomy in Japanese, why not call her Ritsu? Ritsu? Hmm. Ritsu, the robot echoed. I think I like it. Call me Ritsu, everyone. Grinned and bumped shoulders with his sulking best friend, and his classmates gushed over the robot girl. She's fitting in pretty nicely now with this new programming, don't you think? Maybe, Shinso said. She's still a robot, though. I wouldn't be surprised if her career changes her back soon. What makes you say that? The green-haired boy asked again, blinking widely. Shinso hummed, picking up the smallest piece of his chessboard. Well, when it comes down to it, she is still a pawn. She doesn't exactly have free will, and masters aren't too keen on having their pawns making their own decisions. The brainwasher gripped the pawn piece in his hand tightly, his face darkened with a shadow from his hair. As he stared down, his purple eyes seeming to glow with dejection. Trust me, I would know. Like Shinzo predicted, the next day, Rito was remodeled and back to her old self. Unlike Shinzo predicted, however, the robot defied all expectations and managed to retain the majority of her old programming, choosing to hide it from her creator after she decided she liked being friends with everyone better than being a constant assassin. She had proof that she had her own free will, and while everyone else congratulated her and cheered her on, Izuku couldn't help but notice the unreadable expression on his best friend's face, the pawn piece still sitting in his palm. There was a strange man in the school building. Izuku had come inside during lunch, hoping to get some extra help on chemistry, when he noticed a tense aura surrounding his two human teachers as they confronted the man. He couldn't help but instinctively hide in the nearest storage closet. I think it's about. I think. I think it's about time you run home, Marina. Leave the rest of this mission to me, the man said, his accent strong and foreign. You do great in undercover missions, yes, but you are little use once your cover has been blown. Izuku's eyes widened as he tried to peer outside to see what was going on. Miss Yelovich was standing up shakily. Please, sir, give me another chance. I can do it. She pleaded, but then suddenly cried out. Moving at speeds that could only be topped by Koro Sensei, the strange man grabbed Miss Yelovich's arm, pinning it behind her back. Don't take this personally, Irina. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. It's time you accepted yours and head home, he said darkly. Suddenly, Koro-sensei appeared out of nowhere, in his usual noisy manner. But Izuku was no longer listening in on his conversation. His mind was still caught on one subject: strengths and weaknesses. This concept haunted Izuku his whole life. At first, in his all might consumed mind, there had been nothing but strength. But then, as he had sat there in the hospital room, the doctor staring down at him as he explained those stupid x rays of his feet, the word quirkless echoed in his mind. He'd felt so incredibly weak. It didn't help that his childhood ex friend was obsessed with the concept as well. He was driven on this idealism of survival of the fittest, and the moment it became known Izuku was quirkless, the green haired boy was now seen as the least fit of all. The friendship turned to dust in days, and it was only solidified when Izuku dared to stop his Bakugo from bullying another boy. Even the school was built off the concept. Those in the main building, Class A through D, were deemed strong enough and therefore worthy of such benefits. E class was the mole rat, the stepping stones designed to be tread on. Their quirks were too weak, their grades were too low, their behavior was too improper. In E class, though, he thought he had finally found an escape, a place where everyone was welcoming no matter what your talents were. Even their immensely powerful teacher was willing to slow down and loan them the strength to overcome any weakness. He didn't know why he thought assassination could be different from the rest of the world. In the end, it all comes down to the killer and their target. Whoever is stronger determines who makes it out alive. Distantly, he processed that Kor-sensei had arranged some competition for the stranger and Miss Yelovich to prove who was the better assassin. But it didn't really settle that the confrontation was over until he heard footsteps approaching. By then, it was too late to react, and all he could do was awkwardly stand there as the stranger came into view. The old dark-haired man paused to stare at the frightened boy before scoffing and walking away, muttering about silly children and their snooping. Izuku blinked, and then next thing he knew, he was scrambling after the man. Sir, wait! He called out. They were just outside the entrance of the building as the man surprisingly came to a stop, turning to stare at him. What do you want, child? He said. Izuku tried not to get intimidated by the man's intense manner. I'm sorry to bother you, sir, but you shouldn't say that about Miss Yelovich. I don't think you know her that way anymore, he said anxiously. The dark haired man stared directly into his eyes, anger almost palpable. You think I don't know Arena? Do you even know who I am? Izuku shook his head meekly, and the older man clicked his tongue. I am Lovro, one of the greatest assassins to ever live. I made Arena and countless other assassins the skilled professionals they are today. If anyone knows your English teacher, it is me. But that's just it, Mr. Lovro. Izuku said, still adamant on the matter. You haven't seen her grow. E-Class has changed her, just like it's changed all of us. She's worthy of this mission, and she belongs in this classroom. The man scowled deeply, and for a split second it seemed like the air in the surrounding area was gone. Then, as Izuku found it impossible to breathe, no matter how much his lungs inhaled, he realized that the air had indeed disappeared. He was suffocating, and the old assassin stared dispassionately at his struggles. This is what you get for being a fucking idiot who doesn't know when to shut the hell up, Zeku, the little Bakugo in his head taunted. Izuku had never been more terrified in his life. He had always assumed that if he died before graduation, it would be because Coruscant blew up the Earth, not because he pissed off one of the deadliest men on the planet. But then Lovro chortled, and the air came rushing back. The green-haired boy inhaled greedily, almost collapsing on the ground. Your octopus friend said the same thing. It seems he is teaching his students well, the man said. You are an odd child, very brave and quick to defend. A rare combination these days, especially for a future assassin. Oh no, sir, Izuku replied once he caught his breath. I don't want to be an assassin. I want to be a hero. Izuku Lovro gave him a weird look. Hero, huh? Hero, huh? Well, I see you have much room to grow before you can achieve that. What do you mean? I do not mean to offend, child. You are still very small and obviously underdeveloped. Your body shows promise for good strength and speed, but you lack the muscle and size to defeat larger opponents. Easily worked around, of course, if you know how to. Easily. Wait! Izuku, acting on impulse yet again, jumped out to grab Lovro's cloak. Are you saying that you can teach me how to fight? Lovro, obviously startled, tried to shake the green-haired boy off immediately. Tried to shake the green-haired boy off immediately. What are you? Of course I can. I am the greatest assassin trainer in the world. Now get off, child. Izuku did as he was told and instantly slipped into a deep bow on his knees, his nose kissing the floor. Please teach me how to fight, Mr. Lovro. Sir, you see, I'm useless otherwise. Being an expert in combat is my only hope to become a hero. There was a long, drawn out moment of silence before Lovro sighed. Izuku glanced up hesitantly. Fine, child. I will teach you, he said, rubbing his temples. You must be willing to take your training very seriously, though. I will put you through the same training as I do a new assassin. Yes, sir, Izuku said, scrambling to stand up pin straight. Good. We will begin training here on Saturday at dusk, no later, the man said, walking away again before pausing mid-step. Oh, child, what is your name? Midoriya Zuko, sir, Lovro smiled. I will accept nothing but the best from you, Midoriya Zuko. In the end, Miss Yelovich was able to stay as a teacher, and Lover departed, eyeing Izuku before making his exit. The green-haired boy had figured it was subtle enough. But when class ended, Kora Sensei was bragging about some movie he was going to see in the States. Shinsu dragged him to the side, frowning suspiciously. Why was tall, mysterious, and foreign staring at you earlier? He asked bluntly. Izuku felt his face heating up as he struggled to come up with an excuse. He was? He said in a high pitched voice, trying to feign ignorance. It was clear by the bored look on his best friend's face that Shinzo didn't buy it for a second. Izuku thought frantically for a different excuse. I did bump into him once, not long after he showed up. Maybe it's just because he recognized me? He tried telling a partial truth. Shinzo still looked suspicious. Yeah, sure, he said dryly, but didn't ask any more questions. He just stared, scrutinizing the green-haired boy with deep purple eyes. Zuko scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. Hey, I've got an idea, the quirkless boy said suddenly. Since Core Sensei was talking about going to see some movie, what if we went to the movies as well? It won't be the same as him, it won't be the same one as him, obviously, since that one is getting released in the States only right now. But there's a new documentary on All Might, and now how hero work has changed since he came along. When he only got a blank stare, Izuku backtracked embarrassingly. I mean, or we could go see something else if that's too nerdy, or like we don't have to go at all if you're not feeling it. That's cool too. You might be busy. I should have asked if you were free first. It was rude of me to just assume otherwise. Midoriya, Shinso stated, slapping a hand over the boy's mouth. Please be quiet. He didn't feel the unusual sensation of the brainwasher taking control, but Izuku obeyed nonetheless, gazing up with wide eyes. Now, the brainwasher continued, I'd be happy to go see a movie with you. It sounds like a lot of fun, actually. It's funny, we focus so much on assassination and crazy schoolwork that we forget to leave room to live like normal middle schoolers. Shinzo smirked, removing a hand from Izuku's mouth and crossing his arms behind his head. The green-haired boy smiled broadly and couldn't help but pump his fist in the air. Awesome! I checked earlier, and there's a showing not too long from now. And if we hurry, we could get some good seats. The brainwasher hummed. Sounds good, he said, making his way down the path. Izuku chirpily beside his best friend, growing more and Izuku walked chirpily beside his best friend, growing more and more eager, just thinking of how amazing the movie would be, and going with his best friend above all. Back at his old school, no one ever wanted to talk to him, whether it be out of fear of being on the receiving end of Bakugo's constant wrath, or if they thought associating with him would make them go quirkless as well. It didn't really matter. But here, in this little assassination academia, he actually had friends. people who genuinely wanted to spend time with him. While everyone else may not know he was quirkless yet, his closest friend of all did, and he still treated him all the same. And for Izuku, that one reassurance is all he needed to know that he still had some hope left in the world. Hey Midoriya, yeah? I just thought you should know, I'm totally going to make you pay for all this. Later that week, they got word. Later that week, they got word that they would be having another transfer student. After the dramatic mess that was pre-upgraded Ritsu, the whole class couldn't help but collectively sigh. With final exams steadily approaching, the last thing they needed was for class time to be stopped yet again by a crazed child assassin. Zuko tried to remain optimistic. After all, what could be worse than an emotionless killing machine? But then the eerie white cloaked man known as Shiro showed up and introduced his son, an emotionless killing machine human who claimed to be Koro Sensei's brother. And he realized, yes, things could very much be worse. Excuse me. The new transfer student's name was Horib Itona. He had starched white hair and hypnotizing yellow eyes. He was uncomfortably blunt and serious, and his bloodlust was practically palpable. He was uncannily strong, judging by the fact that he made his entrance the first day by punching a giant hole in the wall, and for some reason had been completely dry, though it had been downpouring outside. Oh, and he also had tentacles growing out of the back of his head. What the fudging fudge is going on here? The censored for the sake of his purity, little Bakugo in his head said. The boy and his apparent father, Shiro, had challenged Koro Sensei to a match after the school permitting him to stay in the borders of the classroom while the rest of the students made a circle of desks to stand behind and watch. They expected to be a quick fight where Koro Sensei would swiftly exert dominance while grooming Harib's eyebrows and teaching everyone some important life lesson. They did not expect the strange boy to grow white tentacles out of his hair, and judging by Koro-sensei's beyond furious expression, neither did he. That didn't matter anymore. When the teacher demanded Shiro explain, the white-cloaked man responded by shining a strange beam on the octopus, making him almost immobile. Harib started attacking relentlessly, forcing Koro-sensei to pull out every possible defense to protect himself. It got so bad that Izuku found himself worrying that the creepy father-son duo might actually succeed, that everything they've worked for so far this year would be for nothing. He bit his lip anxiously. His training to be an assassin was the only thing guaranteeing him a future as a quirkless hero. And while it may sound selfish to say, considering the survival of the world was at risk, it didn't seem right that someone outside of 3 might kill Koro Sensei. He was their teacher, their target, their responsibility. But before the fight could go any further south, Koro Sensei whipped out anti sensei knives out of nowhere, damaging Harib's tentacles before wrapping the boy in molten skin as protection and checking him out the window, therefore out of bounds. Koro Sensei won. Horib Itona was carried away by Shiro, who declared the boy would return at an unsaid date, and E class would have another chance to kill their teacher on their own, the way it should be. Zuko spent most of his Saturday afternoon waiting on the training grounds outside of the 3E building, not exactly sure when dusk had started. He didn't want to show up late and make Lovro wait, so his anxious little self settled for sitting on his own for 2 hours. Just as the sun was beginning to set and the sky turned a beautiful mix of purple and orange, he heard a harsh rustle coming from the bushes behind him. He spun around, expecting to find Lovro standing there, but he saw nothing. He continued to stare, partially waiting for the assassin to materialize out of midair, when he felt something tap him on the shoulder. I believe you are only required to come here on weekdays, Midoriya, a familiar, cocky voice said. Izuku jumped, spinning around and striking with his knife that he pulled out with surprising ease. The octopus was, of course, hardly phased and dodged easily while holding his tentacles up in the air as if surrendering. Hey, while I applaud your reflexes, I can only stand these constant assassination attempts so many days a week, Koro Sensei cried. Izuku slowly lowered his knife and smiled sheepishly. Sorry, Sensei, you scared me there. I was, expecting someone else. Oh, the octopus said, grinning mischievously, green stripes appearing on his face. And who might that be? Some pretty girl? No! Izuku cried, his cheeks flaming and his arms flailing wildly. The octopus's skin had changed to a light shade of pink. No? Is it a very special boy then? I don't judge, of course. No! The green haired boy objected, his voice cracking as he buried his face in his palms as the teacher poked playfully at the embarrassed boy. Oh, really? Who is it then? It's me. The teacher and student looked over and saw Lovro coming out of the tree line. Korosensei, for once in his life, looked at a loss of words. You? The octopus spat, completely aghast. He grabbed Izuku by the cheeks and pulled at them playfully. I'm afraid I simply cannot condone this, Midoriya. This man is incredibly too old for you. Just look at that wrinkled and sunken face. Hardly could be considered attractive. I understand that many youngsters are drawn to older men mainly for their money, but at least hold yourself to a higher standard than that, Midoriya. Karasuma, for example. Stop! Zuko exclaimed, pushing tentacles away. He wished he could dig a hole so he could curl up into a ball and die. I'm not meeting him for that reason. He promised to train me to become a better fighter and assassin. An awkward pause passed over everyone. Oh, Korn Sensei at least had the decency to look embarrassed. Lovro sighed loudly and rubbed his face. Now that that foolishness is out of the way, the foreign assassin said, may I get to teaching my student? There is much I need to cover tonight. Your student? Korsente repeated, his face darkening. Oh, great, his teacher pride was wounded. I'll have you know, Mr. Lovro, that Midoriya always is and always will be my student first. And if I personally want to oversee my students' learning, I will. The two men stared down at each other, Izuku standing awkwardly between them. I'm afraid that is unacceptable. How do you expect young Midoriya to use any of the skills I teach him if you are here to learn them all? Izuku cleared his throat timidly. I really don't mind, sir. Silence, Midoriya. I simply cannot allow this man to observe everything, especially your quirk. Izuku stiffened instantly. Oh God. Kuro-sensei seemed to understand the reasoning. It was, after all, the reason he never came to quirk chaining. The octopus backed off slightly, though the usual smile had yet to return to his face. All right, Lovro, he said finally. I'll let you teach my student alone. But heed my words. If I catch word that you're treating Midoriya anything I don't approve of, I will make you pay for it. The teacher's eyes glowed red for effect, and Izuku felt himself sweat drop. Lovro didn't seem to feel as intimidated as he nodded, holding his hand out calmly. Korsensei gripped it with his fingered tentacle as the two men made a silent agreement amongst themselves. When they dropped their hands, Korsensei turned back to the green-haired boy, smiling once again. Well, you two. Oh my gosh, this cord makes it impossible. My legs are cramping. I gotta move my charger on my computer. Oh, it's a mess. I wish I could edit. I would fix this, but this is also a live stream at the same time, so that also makes it kind of impossible. I will make you pay for it. The teacher's eyes glowed red for effect, and Izuku felt himself sweat drop. Lovro didn't seem to feel as intimidated, and nodded, holding his hand out calmly. Kurosensei gripped it with his fingered tentacle, as the two men made a silent agreement among themselves. When they dropped their hand, Kurosensei turned back to the green-haired boy, smiling once again. Well, you two have fun with your assassination training. See you in class, Midoriya, he said before launching into the sky at Mach 20. Izuku covered his eyes from the dust pickup before turning hesitantly to the foreign assassin. The man popped his knuckles and took off his coat. Well, Midoriya Izuku, he said, let's begin. But first, I must ask you what your quirk is so I can teach you how to fight with it. Oh, the green-haired boy said, claiming up instantly. He felt like he was going to be sick. Why did he ever think this was going to be a good idea? You see, well, I'm quirkless. His voice pitched up at the end as if it were a question. Lovro blatantly tensed, gazed at him blankly for a couple of minutes before sighing loudly. Of course, he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. Your training just got much more interesting. 10 laps around the school. Go now. Training with Lovro was definitely not fun. To be exact, it sucked. The man worked him ruthlessly, rarely giving him a break, and by the end of it, Izuku was sure he was one lap away from having a heart failure. Currently, all the foreign assassin was focusing on was conditioning, trying to get Izuku fit enough to make up for his lack of physical quirk, or quirk at all. But at least he's still willing to train me, Izuku thought, trying to remain optimistic as he dragged himself home. He had been terrified Lowbro would drop him the moment he learned he was quirkless, so he was willing to take the gruesome workouts if it meant the assassin would still teach him. It was almost 10 o'clock at night by the time he finally reached his home, a tiny two-bedroom apartment not far from Kanugigaoka that they were renting temporarily, while Izuku finished up his third year. His mother had sacrificed a lot to get him far away from Bakugo and into a prestigious enough academy that would keep high schools from wondering why he transferred. He was eternally grateful that she had given up for his that she had given he was eternally grateful for what she had given up for his future, even down turning a promotion to take a new job here. He understood, however, that she was hoping this new school would push him to pursue different dreams than becoming a hero, which is why he was careful to keep his assassination training at school a secret, and instead pretending to be extremely invested in his schoolwork. He told his mother that he was meeting up with some friends from class to study for an upcoming quiz, so she wouldn't be suspicious. "Mom, I'm home," he called out when he opened the door. His mother peeked her head out from inside the kitchen, still in her work uniform. She'd probably just gotten home from her shift. "Hi, dear. How's studying?" she asked. Izuku placed his backpack, filled with prop textbooks to sell his story, next to his shoes. "It was good. It definitely helped a lot," he said, wincing as he straightened his back out. He was going to be sore for days. "Oh, guess what?" his mother said cheerfully as she began to snack. Food had become her comfort and stress relief lately. "I was talking with a customer at work, and she said that her son had attended Kanugiaoka when he was younger, and while beforehand she worried he would never make it through high school, he was so motivated by the school that now he's a top medical student at his university. Isn't that amazing?" "Yeah, incredible," Izuku said, filling up a glass of water. His mother had been coming home with these Kanugigaoka success stories almost every day for the past 2 weeks, likely trying to inspire him to do the same. He didn't have the heart to tell her that the students in her stories weren't ever in 3E. "There are many promising careers you can easily pursue just by having Kanugi Aoka in your background. Lawyer, doctor, engineer, dentist, project manager. Hey, are you even listening?" Izuku jumped slightly, instantly getting knocked out of his dozing state. "What?" he said when he noticed his mother's stern gaze. He bit his lip. "Oh, sorry, Mom. I'm just really exhausted after studying for so long. I think I'm gonna go to bed." "Oh, sweetie," his mother said, returning the "Oh, okay, sweetie," his mother said, her smile returning to her face as she finished off her rice cake. Izuku sighed as he entered the bedroom, closing the door behind him. The giant All Might poster above his bed greeted him, his triumphant smile giving him the motivation to keep pushing. One day he would be on one of those posters. Uh, One day he would bring hope for a young broken boy like himself. At his old apartment, every inch of his walls had been covered in posters of every hero out there. His mom had offered to help him put them back up when he had moved, but Asuka had declined, seeing no point. Given it a year, he'd be moving back to Musutafu, attending the greatest hero school in the country. That's the dream. They just have to stop the Earth from blowing up first. Zuko had never been very keen on sports. Well, to be completely accurate, he was absolute trash at sports. While he was half decent at running due to years of running away from Bakugo, whenever a task and a ball was added into the mix, as well as the competitive nature of it all, he tended to crumble. His anxiety made him utterly challenged whenever he was told to kick a goal or throw a pitch, and all of the attempts ended to being pitiful at best. So when Koro Sensei announced he was going to coach them for the upcoming exhibition baseball game between Kanugi Yaoka baseball team and the boys of 3E, Izuku's immediate reaction was to find every excuse not to compete. Of course, in his panic, the best excuse he came up with was, "I think I'm going to be sick that day," which wasn't entirely a lie since the thought of playing the sport made him ill. His classmates in the surrounding area stared at him blankly, while Shinso just facepalmed. "Lord help him," he muttered. Isuka frowned, embarrassed, and elbowed his friend in the arm. "It's okay. It's okay, Midoriya. We all feel that." I can't remember Nagisa's voice. "It's okay, Midoriya. We all feel that way when it comes to competing against the main campus kids," Nagisa said comfortingly. "No joke," Mimuri exclaimed. "Everyone knows these exhibition games are just created for the student body to get a good few laughs at our humiliation." The rest of the boys nodded in agreement, echoing their sympathy. Midoriya still didn't feel any better. Never fear, young Midoriya, Koro-sensei proclaimed, appearing behind the green-haired boy out of nowhere. With my specialized training and immaculate coaching strategies, our success is foolproof. The problem with that, thought anxiously, as they were led to the newly polished yard, perfect for baseball training, is that the ones pulling the strings on the main campus could hardly be considered fools. Is it? They said foolproof, and yeah, I get it. I didn't. Christensen's idea of specialized training was moving at Mach 20, so his doubles made up the entire basketball team, topped with supersonic pitches and aggravating trash talk. The whole exercise just seemed to prove everyone's suspicions that they were utter trash. No one could hit a ball beyond bunting it, and their throwing and catching skills were subpar. Shinzo had given up moments after Koro-sensei tried to get him to run laps through the bases. The brainhash boy had settled for kicking pebbles at the octopus's doubles for fun with Karma. Their one saving grace was the resident baseball geek Sugino, who, even though it's against the rules to use their quirk in competitive sports settings, had improved his normal pitch tremendously. It gave everyone at least a little hope for success. After falling flat on his face trying to run to first base, and just before Izuku felt he was seconds from death, their teacher stopped practice and called Midora to the front. Now, these past few days, I've been having you gather spy data on our opponents, Mimura, if you would, the teacher explained. The bowl cut boy nodded and closed his eyes. When he reopened them, they began to glow, forming holographic sheens forming a holographic screen showing a video of Kanuki Gaoka's baseball team practicing. Whoa, Mimura, that's your quirk? Sugaya asked. Yep, it's called record. I record everything I see in my head and can play it back through the hologram with my eyes, the boy answered, his voice sounding awfully strained, tears forming in his eyes. The only problem is that it kinda hurts to keep my eyes open for a long time. Izuku robotically had whipped out his notebook the moment Mamura presented his quirk and started writing. He heard Shinzo squawk from next to him. Where do you even keep that thing? Koro-sensei had explained that while the opposing team's captain and pitcher, Shindo, had an extremely impressive fastball, it's the speeds of which the boy throws are slow motion compared to what Koro-sensei had been throwing, meaning that when they had to go bat against him in the game, they would have no problem bunting the ball with precision. I knew I couldn't make you home run hitters in a few days, Koro-sensei elaborated, but I had absolute faith that I could train your reaction time to be used to the balls going upwards of 300 kilometers per hour. So any normal pitch would seem like a walk in the park. And then when it comes down to it, it's nothing different from any other assassin versus target situation. You all have the skills to try and take out someone like me, so don't stress about taking down smaller opponents. Now back to practice. We have a game to win. Izuku couldn't help but groan as he grabbed his baseball gloves, stealing it back from Shinso. The brainwasher was trying to use it as an eye mask so he could take a nap. He certainly hoped Koro-sensei was right. To the shock of everyone, they had started out the game surprisingly strong. Koro-sensei's training and strategy was working to a T, and it was obvious the other team was getting flustered. As Sugino went up to the bat and managed to clear the bases and land himself on third, Izuku was actually starting to think their assassination baseball mission could actually be a success. But then the Kanugi Gaoka team got a coach change, and Principal Asano took his place. Everything went downhill fast. After the baseball team had a timeout with the manipulative man, the entire team moved completely infield, and the umpire didn't make any call on it. The bunting strategy was completely useless, and dread settled in Izuku's stomach when he realized he was up next to bat. He turned desperately to Koro-sensei, who was posing in the outfield, and had been giving them directions by changing the colors as a type of code. Instead of providing guidance, however, the octopus merely covered his face in shame. Nothing? He cried to himself, walking to the plate. He felt like throwing up. The Kanuki Gaoka team had completely changed, staring at Izuku blankly like mindless creatures with only one goal: to crush him. Shindo pitched his famous fastball robotically, and Izuku could do nothing but desperately pop it up. It was caught easily, and the green-haired boy had never been more relieved to hear he was out. What kind of animal is What kind of animal is Principal Osno? He said as he returned to the dugout, collapsing next to Shinzo on the bench. It's like a completely different group of people. I was worried they were going to tear me limb from limb. He clearly has a mind quirk, Shinzo said, looking more thoughtful than Izuku had ever seen him. His eyes wouldn't leave the principal in question. And it has something to do with his eyes. The players wouldn't stop staring into his eyes when he was talking. At first I thought it was some kind of hypnosis quirk, but I think it's much more complex than that. Izuku nodded. I mean, quirks are usually genetic, so it's probably similar to his son. Some kind of omniscience type? Yeah, when Asano makes skin to skin contact, he automatically knows things about you. The more or longer he touches you, the deeper the things he learns about you get, Shinzo explained. The brainwasher sighed and leaned back, covering his eyes with his arm. I'm not sure how that ties to his father. Maybe he looks you in the eye and knows how to manipulate you? It was a scary thought, especially for a man like Principal Asano. Izuku remembered the first time he had met the man during his quirk evaluation for the school. The man had laughed at Izuku for being quirkless, viewing him below the scum of the earth. To think that such a man knew how to control someone by just looking at them was petrifying them. Was petrifying. The game continued to grow more and more grim. While they managed to keep them from scoring at the bottom of the first, E-Class was completely shut down again by the opposing team's cheap tactic of crowding the infield, and was out within the first three batters. The Kanuki-Gaoka team came back at the bottom of the second with a vengeance, scoring 2 runs while E-Class could do nothing but watch. When it came to the top of the third, as you can notice that Shinso and Karma seemed to have plotted earlier in the game with Core Sensei. The two boys were doing what they do best, shamelessly pissing off and insulting the crowd, bluntly calling out the other team for cheating. As the purple-haired boy walked up to the bat, he even called Shindo a cowardly, mindless dog, and the pitcher's nostrils flared at the insult, making the brainwasher smirk. You better watch your you better watch your mouth, E-Class freak! Shinso spat, rearing back to throw. Shinso merely shrugged, and half-heartedly threw up and threw his hit and half-heartedly held his bat up to swing. Or what? It's not like you'll hit me or anything. The pitcher scowled as he winded up to throw and sent his famous fastball headed directly for Shinso. Thankfully, the boy was quick enough to get out of the way before it hit him directly on, instead letting it skim his arms. Nonetheless, it was undeniably a hit, no matter how biased the umpire was, and Shinso got a free walk to first base. Wow. Wow, I can't believe he actually hit him, Karma mused, smirking. Shindo was staring at his hand as if it had acted on its own accord. Izuku exchanged disbelieving looks with Nagisa, though for different reasons. Had Shinso really just used his quirk? The brainwasher was always so conservative using his quirk, only doing so when he felt it was safe or that he was desperate. He hadn't even used it on Core Sensei yet. It seemed his animosity around his quirk was working in his favor. It used it subtle enough for bystanders to just think it was a slip up. No one called him for cheating. The look on the principal's face, however, was way too unsettling. He was watching Shinzo as if he was some intriguing specimen. The smirk grew on the manipulative man's face. Oh crap. By some unbelievable miracle, they actually won the game. When it came Shindo's time to bat during the last inning, Koro Sensei pulled out his final strategy, having Shinso and Karma standing just a few feet away from the batter, blatantly distracting and intimidating the baseball player. And as Karma pointed out, the umpire couldn't do a thing since he refused to call the opposing team for their extensive defense earlier. He Izuku could just barely hear what the boys were saying from his spot on third base. You okay there, Mr. Chosen One? You're not worried about hitting us, are you? Karma teased. Shindo gritted his teeth, eyes shifting wildly between Shinzo and Karma. When Sugino pitched, the boy swung madly, but back coming centimeters from the two boys as they expertly dodged, and the boy landed safely in Nagisa's glove. Strike! The umpire called, making Shindo look even more alarmed. You seem a little shaken, Shindo. Strange how easily You seem a little shaken, Shindo. Strange how easily control can be taken from you, huh? Shinzo mocked cruelly. It seemed to make Shinzo finally snap. He had his neck swing. He had His next swing was entirely off, letting the ball bounce to the ground in front of Karma, who tossed it to Nagisa to get the person on third out. Suddenly, Izuku saw the ball being tossed to him, and he barely had time to react, throwing his hands in front of his face defensively. To his shock, the boy landed cleanly in his glove, getting another player out. Come on, Izuku! Throw to first! His teammates cried. Izuku had half a brain to do just that and threw the ball with all his might. Pre-Core Sensei training, the ball would have likely gone only a few meters, but now it sailed all the way over to Sugaya on first base. It landed right in front of the gray-haired boy, who easily scooped it up, getting the third player out. It took a good minute and an earful of screaming from the biased announcer before it dawned on Izuku that they won. Miyahara jogged by and gave Izuku a celebratory pat on the back, while Kimura complimented his catch. Not bad for someone who was supposed to be sick today, Shinso teased as he walked up to him. Izuku laughed lightheartedly. I can't believe we won. The crowd sure doesn't look too happy about it, he said, eyeing the outraged stadium. Shinso sighed. Who cares? It's about time we showed them we're more than laughing stocks. Just as they were leaving the field, Izuku realized he'd left his notebook in the dugout and informed his best friend of this, telling him he'll be right back. Shinso looked at him like he's mad, probably wondering why on earth he would bring his notebook to a baseball game. In his defense, you never know when a perfect quirk demonstration will happen. When he returned, his notebook grasped firmly in his hand, he came to a dead stop at the sight before him. Shinso was standing in the same spot, his expression as unreadable as usual, just as like Izuku had left him. However, there was a terrifying new addition. Principal Asano stood behind the brainwasher. Excuse me. Principal Asano stood behind the brainwasher, his hand placed firmly on Shinso's shoulder. He appeared to be saying something in the purple boy's ear, his charismatic yet cruel smile present the entire time. His friend was completely still and tense the entire time, as if bracing for an attack at any time. And in a way, he was. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, the principal walked away, his smile unceasing. Izuku approached his frozen friend tentatively. Though it was clear the boy was trying to hide it, the stress and terror was still evident in Shinso's body language. The boy seemed to be having a staring contest with the floor, so intense, in fact, that when Izuku lightly touched his arm, the brainwasher flinched as though he'd been smacked. Shinso, he said, but he found himself at a loss for words. The brainwasher's eyes gave away how stressed the boy was, even if he tried to shrug it off. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it, Jolly Green, the boy said weakly, his usual smirk forcibly returning to his face. Let's just go home, okay? No, it wasn't okay. There was so much Izuku wanted to say, to ask. He knew how frazzled Shinso was. It was written all over the boy's face. Principal Asano was a manipulative monster, and even though Shinso was one of the most indifferent, stubborn people Izuku knew, there was little doubt that the principal could easily see through the brainwasher. They were halfway through the walk when Izuku finally asked, "You're not in any kind of trouble, are you?" Shinzo stopped walking, and it was only through training with Koro Sensei that the quirkless boy was able to halt before ramming into his friend's back. I don't know, the brainwasher finally responded. Are you? Izuku knew what his friend was. Izuku knew that his friend was referring to the suspicious interaction with Lovro. The green-haired boy sighed deeply, looking down at his hands. Why were they both such a mess? I don't know, he finally answered, though he wanted to say so much more. He didn't want to keep feeding into Shinso's defenses, but he had no choice if he wanted to protect his own. He couldn't learn his friend's problems without telling his own, but he wasn't quite ready to give those up. Assassination is, after all, work established on secrets. For once, Izuku's prayers were answered, and when he met up with Shinso early the next morning, coffee in hand, with extra cream just in case, things returned back to normal. They seemed to make a silent agreement to move past the awkward confrontations the day before and follow their routines as per usual. And after their daily morning sparring session ended with a typical draw, each with a knife at each other's throat, Shinso strangely didn't start to walk with Izuku like usual. He stayed back, digging absent-mindedly through his bag. The green-haired boy paused and looked back at his best friend. "Shinso?" he asked. The brainwasher didn't reply, but looked up slowly with a suspicious gleam in his eye. That was all the answer that Izuku needed. The quirkless boy was just a second slow in reacting, though. Before he could jump out of the way, Shinso had dropped his bag and flicked out his arms. An unidentifiable object rocketed forward from the boy's palms as he wrapped it around Izuku's arm and legs in seconds. Shinso water and breathe. The quirkless boy was just a second slow reacting, though. Before he could jump out of the way, Shinzo had dropped his bag and flicked out his arms. An unidentifiable object rocketed forward from the boy's palm and wrapped around Izuku's arm and leg in seconds. Shinzo yanked the smaller boy was on his back, wondering what had just happened. Is this string? He asked Lily, sitting up to get a better look. Did you seriously just take me out with a yo-yo? Shinzo shrugged smugly, releasing a string wrapped around Izuku's limbs. It's a modified yo-yo that makes you, if that makes you feel any better, he explained. It didn't. I got the idea watching Itona and Koro senseis attack each other with their tentacles, using them to get extra reach. I'm still trying to work it to get exactly how I want, but the whole invention thing was never really my forte. The brainwasher held out the small devices for Izuku to get a better look. They were two identical metal spheres, only about 2 or 3 centimeters in diameter, with a hole that dispensed the string from what appeared to be winded up inside. There was a metal ring at the end of each string that Izuku wore that Shinzo wore on each of his middle fingers. The purple-haired boy demonstrated pushing the spear against the ring and clicking it in place, making it look like a really odd fashion choice instead of a weapon. That's so cool, Shinzo! You really did that yourself? Izuku asked, eyes wide. The brainwasher hummed bashfully. I had a lot of help from one of my foster siblings. She has a reverse engineer type quirk, but she's only 7, so she's still limited in what she can do. It's way bulkier than I'd like, and the range on it could be a lot better. I'd prefer if there was some way to control the aim. Um, if there was some sort of way to control the aim besides pure skill to make it more accurate. I also wish I could find more material more reliable than string that's still just as malleable. There's nothing even remotely cheap enough. Still, this is cool. It really compliments you. It gives off that whole puppet master vibe, in a good way, of course. I always thought that when you used your quirk, it felt like someone was turning my body into a real life puppet. Is what I mean. Shinzo blinked. Really? Yeah. Has no one ever told you? Izuku asked, confused. The brainwasher shrugged. Well, most people who experience my quirk are too scared to talk to me ever again, he answered, his lips pursed. And Izuku froze. Oh. Being quirkless, he had come to develop an unyielding appreciation and love for all quirks, no matter how weak, dangerous, or unconventional they might be perceived to be. It's why he kept track of quirks in his notebooks and is so obsessed with heroes. For him, where he spent his whole life being either pitied or ostracized, he saw every quirk as a blessing. But ever since he coming to E-class, he realized that having a quirk doesn't immediately mean acceptance or happiness. But as he throws his arm over his friend's shoulder, the best he can at least, Shinzo is quite a bit taller than him, to cheer him up, smiling widely as he pulled him into class, and he's greeted by his classmates, who are slowly becoming more and more like siblings, as he absent-mindedly stabs at his teacher. As Koro Sensei reviews him on geometry, he can't help but feel accepted. And while he still hasn't worked up the nerve yet, he has an inkling of a feeling that even when he is still quirkless, those feelings will never change. Oh, when a feeling that when they learn he's quirkless, those feelings will never change. Wow, every time I do this, I underestimate how long the chapters are. Every chapter in this fan fiction is like an hour long read. It's a bit intense, okay? I get tongue tied towards the end, my mouth gets dry, and like it's oof, it's a whole thing. My hair is always in the way, so I might have to figure out wearing a ponytail or something. Anyways, I enjoyed this time with you. I will see you next time, and I hope you have an amazing day. Yeah. Bye. Ooh, if I can end the stream. Bye.